My husband's been hiding baby batter in my breakfast for a year. The other day, I found a weird jar in the kitchen. It was full of something thick and white, and it smelled awful. Imagine my surprise when it turned out to be my husband's man gunk. It turns out he's been keeping it in a jar for the past year. That was bad enough on its own, but then I learned he's been feeding it to me without my knowledge. I think I might have some feelings about this. So I'm a woman in my 30s. Yesterday, our garbage disposal stopped working, and I was trying to see why. So I was looking around under the sink, and I moved stuff out to get in there so I could look around more easily. In the very back, tucked away, was a mason jar that I thought at first was just over halfway full of kitchen grease. But I realized it wasn't grease. It looked like a man's seed. I made the mistake of opening it, and by the smell, I knew that it was definitely protein. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Disgusted, I threw it away in the dumpster outside. It had to have been my husband's, but I don't know why he would save his baby batter in a jar. My husband got home, and I asked him about it. He seemed very embarrassed, and confessed it was indeed a jar full of swimmers he'd been filling for almost a year. I was shocked, and asked him why. He said whenever it was my time of the month, or I wasn't in the mood, he'd spank into the jar after I went to bed. I asked him why not go in the toilet or use tissues or the shower or something. Why a freaking jar? He couldn't answer that, other than saying he's been doing this since he was a kid. I told him I want him to stop using a jar because it's disgusting. He told me he didn't want to and asked where the jar was. I told him I threw it away, and he was upset. He said it took him a long time to fill the jar that much, and now he had to start over. So we argued about him using a jar to store old spunk in. I still don't understand why he wants to fill a jar for F's sake. We argued about it, and during the argument, he opened the refrigerator, took a large jar of pickles, dumped it out, and started rinsing it. He said, "This is the spunk jar now." Before I knew it, I'm literally screaming at my husband about squirting in jars, and told him he can either shoot his clam sauce in me or the jar, but not both. He clutched the jar and stormed off to the bathroom. I was literally speechless. I sat down and started watching TV, trying to take my mind off it, when he came out and joined me, trying to patch things up. I asked him where he hid the jar, and he wouldn't freaking tell me. He told me we should just forget about the fight. He apologized to me and told me he'd make sure I didn't have to see the jar if I didn't want to. I wanted us to stop fighting, so I agreed, and we didn't speak about it for the rest of the night. He fell asleep early, but I laid in bed for over an hour thinking about the freaking jar. I don't understand why he's so intent on doing something so disgusting, and I'm still angry about it. Update. My husband got home and we sat down and talked. After a lot of prying, I got him to come clean with me about why he sprays his bonk juice in a jar, and why it's in the kitchen. He gets very excited when I eat his nut cream, and he makes pancakes every weekend for breakfast. He mixes his man nectar into the pancake batter and gets off on me eating it without my knowledge or consent. He's been doing this regularly for our entire marriage, and has mixed baby gravy and other things I've eaten and drank. I have, of course, swallowed his seed before, but this is different, because he did this without my knowing. I honestly couldn't yell at him or even say anything. I felt numb. I just got up and started throwing things in a bag, while he tried to talk me down and stop me. I ended up leaving with some bare essentials, and told him that I need space, and will reach out to him when I'm ready to talk. I'm taking some time off of work and heading to a friend's house for a few days. I asked her if I could stay, and she doesn't know why. Honestly, I don't know what to tell her, or anyone else for that matter. I don't know what I'm going to do, or what this means for our marriage. I feel disgusted, used, and like my trust in my husband has been severely damaged. I haven't cried, or done anything yet. I stopped to get a bite to eat on the way to my friend's house, and to try and figure out what to say to her, because I know she'll have questions. I also think I need to cry first. I feel like I'm drowning here, and I have no idea what to do. For any viewers over 21, the best way to watch this video is to do a shot every time I had to replace the same 3-letter word to keep this video from drowning the YouTube censors in a hot, sticky mess of filth. I at least tried to keep it fresh, although maybe fresh isn't the right word under the circumstances. The worst way to watch this video is over dinner, a lesson I had to learn the hard way. Speaking of dinner, how exactly did this original poster not realize she'd been eating brain butter for the better part of a year? Can't say I've ever partaken myself, but I've read enough romance novels to have an idea what it's like. Is she drowning her pancakes in so much syrup that she can't taste them at all? Or does she usually prefer her pancakes on the salty side? I made the mistake of asking Google and learned there are actually cookbooks for this sort of thing, but I don't really want to read one just to see if man jam cooks out when you heat it long enough. Obviously, the husband here is creepy, and I'm not even sure if what he's doing is legal. But that's not even the worst part of this story. The worst part was learning from the comments that there's a subreddit for guys who like to do this. If you don't believe me, take a look at r/jar project and prepare yourself to need a long bath afterward. Whether you decide to bring a mason jar in the tub with you is your own business. Entitled Hobo throws away an entire chicken because I won't give him cash. Today, I noticed a man on the street sleeping in a cardboard bed on the sidewalk outside of a store I was shopping in. I always feel so horrible for the person when I see this. It makes me cry. I have a few family members that struggle with addiction. Substance use is common with the homeless, and I've been taught never to hand over cash, so I buy food or gift cards. When we saw him laying there, my husband mentioned buying him something from Walmart. I always go for food. I bought him a whole cooked chicken and a gallon of juice. I picked these items because I felt they were the most filling, and a lot of the time, food pantries and places that help the homeless can't afford to give out meat. I chose juice instead of water because it has calories. When I went to give the man the food, I was going to just leave it next to him and walk away. I don't like to make people uncomfortable, but I saw he was awake and hoping he could eat the chicken while it was hot and fresh. I also didn't want it to spoil. He was irate about me offering food and not cash. He had a very elaborate story and wanted $60 cash, but not food. I told him I don't carry cash. I use card or Apple Pay, and honestly, I couldn't afford that much right now myself. He took the food, walked over to a trash can, and threw it in the trash. I just hopped back in my vehicle and drove away. I don't regret my decision to provide him food, but is this a thing? Am I the jerk for offering food to a homeless man? I don't want to continue doing it if it isn't actually helpful and makes people angry. Well, it made the commenters angry, I can tell you that much. There's so much chicken hate in these comments, it's ridiculous. The general feeling is that OP's a jerk for giving him items that expire. I don't really agree. Depending on the kind of juice, it doesn't need to be kept cool until after it's open, and if he shares it or drinks it within a day or two, it'll probably be fine. As for the chicken, it'll take hours to go bad. I can eat a whole chicken in less time than that on a full stomach. I'll eat the bones if they're soft enough. Anyone who thinks this homeless man is too good for roast chicken has some weird ideas about charity. Not to mention, this guy could share what he doesn't eat with other people who need food. Instead, he demanded cash, and he demanded a specific amount that a lot of people ask for when they're using it to buy the exact kind of substances OP was worried about. For at least a few substances, $60 will get you through the better half of the day. Trust me on this. We'll just say I learned it from a friend. So, no, I don't think OP's the jerk. Yes, she could have bought gift cards instead, but calling someone a jerk because they bought food for a man in need is about as self-righteous as Reddit can get. Then again, maybe you have a different perspective. Is there anything wrong with what OP did? Let us know in the comments if you think she's the jerk or not, and why. My fiancé won't let me eat anything but salad at my own wedding. My fiancé and I are getting married soon. There wasn't much that we disagreed on during the wedding planning, except for the food. Me and my family are vegans. There are so many reasons why we chose this lifestyle, one of them being that we have a history of health issues. My fiancé and his family are the complete opposite. They are hardcore meat eaters, which is fine by me, obviously. However, when deciding on the wedding food menu, I wanted to add 4 or 5 vegan options. My fiancé and his mom objected, saying it was a waste of money over food that isn't real food. They also argued that this would be offensive to their guests and suggested my vegan options just be the good old salads and appetizers. His mom wanted cupcakes. I said no because, for one, it's me and my family who are paying, and 2, I want to make my guests feel welcome and not be treated as second-class citizens by being served salad. My fiancé made a face and said, "Isn't that what vegans eat?" I refused to argue about it and said it was final. The other day, I found out that he had canceled all the vegan options and took them off the menu completely behind my back. I was seething. I called him at work, but he kept hanging up on me. I went straight to his workplace and confronted him there and just flipped out on him. He was stunned to see me. He at first said it was his mom's idea, then told me to go home because I was making a scene at the office. The fight continued at home, and he defended himself by saying that I sort of made him resort to doing this after I kept brushing off his thoughts and input and refusing to accommodate his family. But there were plenty of meat options. Why can't I get 4 or 5 vegan options when I'm the one paying for it? He yelled that it was his wedding too, not my family's. My family said it was fine and that they'll figure it out and told me to let it go. But I refused. Am I the jerk for putting my foot down on this? Update. So his mom messaged me earlier to try and get me to listen to what she had to say after I kept ignoring her phone calls. She wrote long walls of text just to address what I did at her son's workplace, calling it all kinds of stuff, from immature to unhinged. She then went on to explain how she's noticed that me and my family kept acting dismissive of her son's input and contributions to the wedding. She said that she noticed my behavior towards him and her entire family and wanted to speak up earlier, but didn't, and tried to keep the peace. She then went on to address the food menu issue and denied her involvement in the cancellation of the vegan option. But that didn't mean she doesn't support her son's decision. Moreover, she thought it was so responsible of him to make the move because of my continual refusal to see how this stuff is a waste of money. She also pointed out how I kept saying I paid for it, and she said that technically this isn't just my money. It's mine and his because we're getting married. She suggested I wise up and get rid of the my money, I paid for it mentality. She finally mentioned how bad this whole situation is making me look, and that she and her son had already offered a number of compromises that I chose to brush off and decided to make it my weird hill to fall on. She said that not only is her son upset, but she and the family are as well after hearing about it, and she suggested I just agree on their compromise and be done with it. This ticked me off beyond belief. I responded by letting her know that I'm still standing my ground on this, even if I have to call the whole wedding off because of it. Because honestly, this is just ridiculous. My mom and dad don't even know what to say anymore. Apparently, my fiancé saw my response to his mom because he was with her at the time, and he's now trying to call me. But right now, I'm waiting on him to get home and see if he's still insisting on the stance he took. First of all, it's really up to OP and her husband whether they want to share money, keep it separate, or a mix of both. The mother-in-law doesn't get a say. And in this case, I was totally ready to vote that OP's not the jerk here. But that update actually changed a few things for me. Mostly it's the way she put quotes around practically every other word. Looking back at the beginning, she even put quotes around her husband's wedding guests, but not around her own. This makes me think there are more issues going on here than just the food. It sounds like the husband might have actually had a few other ideas about the wedding that weren't really listened to. Yes, his reasons for latching onto the food thing are dumb. I'm trying to imagine the wedding guests who love meat so much that they'd actually be offended to see it sharing a table with OP's vegan food. Either way, the fact that they're fighting so hard over this one detail makes me think they shouldn't even be married. As a few commenters on a cross post pointed out, it doesn't even seem like these two have met each other if the husband doesn't know that vegans eat more than salad. So yes, definitely call the wedding off, OP. It's a bad match. I don't actually know if either of you is a great match for anyone, but you're definitely an awful match for each other if you've never even eaten in the same room before, which you clearly haven't. I may have just gassed my girlfriend and daughter with Amish pepper spray. Taco Tuesday is a celebrated holiday in our home. This year we bought a variety of pepper plant starts from a local Amish farm, intending to try some new flavors. I went to the garden and plucked a smaller jalapeno and one bright red pepper I had not yet identified. Now, I knew this mystery pepper was at least as hot as a jalapeno because of the smell when I cut the top off. I decided to go easy and only diced 2 thin slices of the pepper. So when my oiled pan had heated up enough, I tossed in the cut onions and peppers and began to swirl the pan to heat them together as usual. Suddenly, I was aware of an extremely dry cough forming in my throat. I turned away from the stove and cupped my hands over my mouth and nose out of instinct. The dry cough wouldn't let up, though, and I was becoming more and more aware that the pores on and around my nose and mouth were burning. I stepped outside the kitchen and heard my girlfriend coughing the same way I was in her office, which is located on the other side of our house. I realized I had basically made pepper spray and fumigated the whole house with it in only a few minutes. I rushed her, our daughter, and both dogs outside. With tears streaming down my glowing red face, nose running, and just looking a complete mess, I stumbled back out to the garden to look for a name tag on the red menace I had unleashed on our home. Caribbean Red Hot. It ranks between 300,000 and 450,000 Scoville heat units. For comparison, jalapenos rank between 2,500 and 8,000. I spent the next hour with a milk-soaked rag on my face until the burning stopped. At least I never touched my eyes. I really envy this OP, because it feels like I always touch my eyes when cutting peppers. I can't imagine why anyone would even buy a pepper that you can't cook without burning your face off. It's fun to try spicy foods, but that's just extreme. It's like the difference between snapping a rubber band on your wrist and just lopping it off with a butcher knife. If this OP's not exaggerating how bad it was, then it sounds like a good thing nobody actually got hurt, especially the poor dogs. I can take or leave the girlfriend and the daughter. It's nice to end on a story where nobody did anything intentionally awful to anyone else, just an innocent little cooking mistake. Have you ever made a mistake like OP's? Share your stories with us in the comments. Maybe we won't narrate them, but we'd love to hear about our subscribers' adventures in the kitchen. Click on one of the videos you see on the screen now, or a Karen will sue you.